Hey guys, JJ back here. This time I wanted to do a video for you guys on some college basketball sports betting tips. Got about 10 different points here that I want to briefly mention. And if you like any of them, I can give you separate videos on more detail on them. But I wanted to put together this video. It's got some strategies, some tools I use to bet college basketball, um, going through some of the ideas and concepts that I constantly go back and forth with in my own head when handicapping a game. So I hope you not only find this video informative, but you can also begin to introduce some of these methods into your own practice. Okay, so number one for me in college basketball is make sure you are a member of Ken Palm's website. That's kenpalm.com. No, I do not work for Ken Palm. I am not affiliated with Ken Palm, nor do I get a kickback for any signups. But I will tell you, the analytics on his website are bar none the best in the industry, especially for a handicapper or even somebody who generally just loves college basketball. For those unfamiliar with Ken Palm, he's an ex-meteorologist. His name is actually Ken Palm, who designed a website to explain basketball, break it down from possession by possession level, per se. He now manages this website full-time, and it can really help you differentiate from one team for another in various categories like adjusted tempo, adjusted efficiency offensively and defensively, free throw percentage, how foul-prone a team may be, how many turnovers that team forces, how many turnovers they have themselves, along with many other helpful stats. Most of your college basketball betting lines also originate from Ken Palm, so in nearly all cases, an opening line you'll see will be at most 1 to 2 points off of Ken Palm's predictions, barring some type of injury, which again, his analytics will not be accounting for. Now, his site should only be used as a tool. It is purely analytics. We all know this in itself cannot be beat the juice. Don't be silly looking for differentiations between his lines and the actual betting lines, assuming there's value to be had. There have been many before you who have used his website and backlogged information and are lifetime losers doing so. So please use these numbers to help you. Do not use these numbers to actually make any decisions for you. Okay, number two for me would be, and in most cases I would have this as number one, and I've mentioned this on a few different videos before, begin to make your own betting lines. As you use a site like Ken Palm more and more, you'll start to realize that you will naturally become better at becoming an odds maker. Why this is so important is you need to have a baseline to go off of when you're making a bet. Without your own baseline and without your own odds that you're coming up with, how would you know if a number that's coming out is right or wrong? For every game you want to bet, make sure you first come up with what you think is a fair line and then compare it to offshore Vegas or Jersey, wherever you're betting. If you are way off, begin to try to figure out why. What did you miss? What's different about the line? Why is it different from what you had? Doing this over the course of a month or so, you will find yourself nearly always afterwards getting yourself within 1 or 2 points of the opening line, and long term, you will be much better off. All right, number three, and this might not be one you've heard of often from other people, but what I like to do myself is stick to about 3 to 4 total conferences and keep your team pool that you actually bet on, the teams you will regularly bet on, to no bigger than 20 to 30 different teams. What I mean by this is there are 353 Division I basketball teams, yet people constantly think they could spend 1 hour or half an hour learning about one team and know everything about them and have a good betting angle on them. When you cap yourself to 20 to 30 teams, 3 to 4 conferences, and you watch basketball, you watch it. Don't just box score hunt. Box score hunting is not going to get you anywhere long term. You're not going to make money looking at a box score. It is very difficult to look at a box score and predict how a game flow actually went. And look, sticking to 20, 30 teams, there's only so much you can wrap around your head. People can't be regularly betting 90, 100, 150 teams. And if you have models that are giving you information, a site like Ken Palm, great. The numbers are good, but the eye test isn't there. You don't have enough time in the day to watch that many teams. Now, what I would say is if you want to bet more teams than that, get yourself jointed up with some of your buddies, some of your friends, family, whoever, and start, each taking a few different teams, each. And then, once line begins to come out, you'll begin to have hunches right away. Hey, I like this team. Let me know. Let me look deeper into it, and then you'll be able to compare it to your numbers and make sure that with your proprietary process that is going to be a favorable bet for you. But again, there's way too many people I know that bet way too many teams. Way too often. Somebody that doesn't even watch these teams is going to give me good information on them. Nah, give me a break. Stick to your 20 to 30 teams, 3 to 4 conferences at the most, and then make sure you're going about it in that fashion. Now, this fourth point goes for all sports, but I want to clarify, because I've mentioned this before in other videos. When you handicap a game, make sure you are giving yourself 3 options. This is most certainly true for college basketball. Option 1 is I would bet Team A at this number. Option 2 is I would bet Team B at this number. Option 3 is here's the number range in between where the bet is an absolute no play for me. Let me give you an example. After you handicap a game, let's say it's Duke, North Carolina, and it's at North Carolina. You have the line set at North Carolina minus, say, 2.5, total 160. This is what you would consider to be your fair line based on your own research and other factors. You then create a 2.5 point gap in both directions. So what does this mean? So if UNC comes back down to a pick instead of 2.5, you would consider UNC favorable. But if Duke goes up to +5, you would then consider Duke favorable. If the number is anywhere between North Carolina minus 0.5 and Duke +4.5, the game is a no play for you on either end. So you see, you have this 5-point middle where you won't even bet the game at all, but you've created yourself a double-sided bet opportunity for each team. There's not enough people that do this. People typically look at a game and say, and they only talk about one side. Oh, I would bet this side, or this team's going to crush this team, or I love this team in this spot. You don't hear enough talking about the number, and you most certainly don't hear people enough talk about the other side number. How could you think about betting one side when you wouldn't even have an idea of how to consider betting the other side? These are things you need to get yourself in the habit of. Start doing this long term because ultimately it is a necessity. Once you start beginning to do this and getting yourself in the flow of doing this, you'll find yourself finding value far more often than not. Because again, instead of looking at when you look at a game and you're like, oh, I like this team, you've already removed 50% of your teams from play because you're looking up and down at an odds sheet and you're saying, oh, I like this team, I like this team, I like this team, I like this team, but you're not even considering what the other side could be, what you would bet the other side at. This is something you need to do because again, it's all about favorable numbers. We don't bet teams, folks. We bet numbers. All right, number 5 would be using live betting to your advantage. I see this all the time. You're a guy who works 9 to 5. You haven't made a bet all day. You get home right before tip-off at 7, and all of a sudden you got the ants in the pants. The degenerate sickness is taken over, so you want to make 3 bets real quick right before the 7 o'clock action. You look at some of the touts you trust or handicappers you trust, and now all of a sudden you're betting games right before tip and you're getting really shitty numbers. So let's say the first team you bet opened at -6, you ended up getting them at -8. Second team opened at -4.5, you get them at -5.5. Third team opened at -1, you get them at -2.5 because you were late to the party for all 3. My advice for you in all those scenarios is to look at the actual game, find out what the opening line was for that game. So in these cases, you would have, after the fact, found out that it was 6, 4.5 and 2.5, and then let the game start. Don't make the bet on the game. It is very, and I say this, and I do say this to a lot of people, live betting, use it to your advantage in the fact that, especially in basketball, where there's a lot of runs on both sides of the game, one team will go on an 8-0 run, other team will counter with a 6-0 run, 12-2 run, 12-4 run, and it just goes back and forth. So very rarely does a team win wire to wire. So in nearly all cases, you will be able to get a live game bet or live game number that was better than the pre-game bet. So my always take is, instead of getting that worst number pre-game because you weren't there first to the party to crack a good number, wait for the game to start, see if maybe the game goes in your favor a little bit, and then get your original line that you would have gotten, just bet it live instead of before the game. Now, I'm telling you this now, why doesn't everybody do this? Well, everybody doesn't do this because not everybody has the time to do this. I don't do this all the time, but there are some spots where I look at a line and I'm like, oh shit, I really wanted to bet that game, but now the number's shitty, so I'm not betting it. But I will. It'll be a game I kind of watch, and just now maybe on TV, but maybe in on a live betting app, and just kind of wait for me to crack the number I originally wanted to get. But I know, look, we all live busy lives, so the reality is that that's not something everybody can do. But I want to be clear that occasionally you should begin to look into this, because there are way too many people that bet right before a game starts, an hour before. They get a really crappy number, and ultimately they could just have let the game start and then live bet a better number. Now, again, this is only really something that's good for the people that are going to bet a game that's 2 to 3 points off. If it's a half a point, I wouldn't go crazy about it. But again, this is all about getting favorable numbers. You'll see me mention these in all these points. So use live betting to your advantage in that manner. So while we're talking about line movement, number 6 is a good segue to line movement in itself. Line movement becomes a double-edged sword because I know there are people who obsess over it. People who could, and then there's the other side of it, people who give 2 shits about it. As a sports bettor, I think that at minimum you need to be somewhere in between the two. What I mean is, be someone who has the foresight when a line comes out to at least be able to predict where you think the line is going. For example, let's say you have a hunch on a team and your models are spitting out different numbers than Vegas for this said team. This team opens at +2. You have that number 2 as favorable. But everything you see, your research you're doing, separate from your models, the research you're doing, basically Ken Pom, ESPN, the media, you're seeing that the public is most likely going to hammer the favorite. So you now are going to sleep on it and wait to see if you can get a better number in the morning. You wake up, you notice now it's not 2, now it's 2.5 with extra juice. So now you're like, okay, wow, I did predict that right, but now with the extra juice, there's probably a chance it's going to go to 3. So now you wait a little longer, and once it gets to 3, boom, you crack it. Now, this might not seem like a big deal. It's only 1 point, half a point, maybe, whatever. But if this is something you're proactively doing, you will be profitable much more long-term. Remember, it is a numbers game. Long-term good numbers matter. Short-term, maybe not so much. But if you're in this for the long haul, you have to begin to have the foresight to be able to predict where the sports betting public is going to move a number. Now, money moves numbers, and sometimes money's not always very predictable because money sometimes is unjustifiably bet on teams. But for the most part, if you are right more times than you are wrong, long term you will be paid dividends. All right, number 7, stop laying more than double-digit points in college basketball, especially on the road. You are dealing with children here that don't give a shit if they win by more than 10 points or 15 points or 20 points. There is no benefit to them to do so. These are kids that get complacent with a big lead. I'm not saying that there aren't certain isolated scenarios where this might be favorable, but for the most part, these are not situations to bet on. Now, am I telling you to turn around and start betting every underdog that's double digits? Absolutely not, because there's a lot of teams that suck balls. But what I need to say to you is that stop betting these double-digit favorites because you are constantly going to be sweating games out late. You'll find yourself, only winning long term if your teams are making their free throws late. The other team is not scoring in the last 60 seconds. These are rarely favorable spots to bet. Yet I see a lot of people who love laying 10 plus points in college basketball, especially when they're getting like a really good team that goes on the road to play a really shit team. They think, oh, I'm getting a soft number here. It's never the case. You will keep your resting heart rate much lower, dodging these double-digit bullets. All right, number 8 in these college basketball tips. Now, what would a tip list be in sports betting without me at least mentioning bankroll management? Now, stick to 1-unit games for about 95% of the games you bet. Now, college basketball, there is a ton of action. It's not like betting NBA or NFL or NHL or Major League Baseball. You will have a ton of action every single night. And on Saturdays, you'll have over 100 games to choose from, or about 100 games to choose from. Now, I say it's always bet 1 unit per game. Literally, you could bet more than 1 unit, like 5% of your games. And even when you do it, you should never be betting more than 2 units in a game. These are the type of games that can really crush a bankroll. I mean, think about it. If you're betting 2 units on certain games, and then you're betting 1 unit on most of your games, if you are, let's just say 33% of your games are 2 units and 66% are 1 unit. And let's just say you are 500 on your 2-unit games, and you've bet 100 of them over the course of the season, you've now lost, a bunch of juice over those games. And even if you were profitable on the 1 units, it's not going to matter because you're giving back so much on those 2 units. A lot of people have unwarranted confidence in 2-unit plays and 5-unit plays, 10-unit plays, and a bunch of it's bullshit. I don't care how confident your picks are. If you're somebody who's confident long-term, stick to 1 units, stick to 1-unit bets, and you will, as long as your winning percentage is there, you're going to be profitable. Don't be silly padding extra unit bets for games because long-term you're only going to sting yourself, and extra unit games becomes a chasing mechanism, which again is just something that can only bury you further. So again, I wanted to mention the bankroll management portion of this because I think it's necessary for any sports betting tips video. Number 9, a proper hedging strategy. Now, the classic question of, well, when is the right time to hedge, especially in college basketball? I will tell you this much. Hedging is really perspective or relative to the individual. Okay, some people enjoy more risk. Some people like to play things a little safer. I will tell you what I do. Okay, I nearly will always hedge a game if I can get 5-1 odds back on the opposite side, and we were still in the first half. I do this because it is what makes me comfortable. I know if my team is a 7-1 favorite to win at the half, and they're a game that I got at like pick or -1 or +1 prior to the start, I know if my team ends up losing or blowing it in the second half, I will be hella tilted if they lose that game. So I've learned over time that how I don't tilt myself is I buy back the other side at +5-1 or at 5-1 so that I will get my original bet back if it loses. And if my original team wins, I'll still pick up 4/5 of a unit. Now, you can turn around and try to find a middle to these games, like where instead of betting money line, maybe you'll bet them plus the points backwards. The problem with that is if the team you originally bet ends up continuing to crush, you would have wound up you would have wound up not winning anything on a bet that you had right from the get-go. That's my only problem with middling. I'm all for middling, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you can't find favorable spots middling as a hedging strategy with the points, but for me, it doesn't make all that much sense. If you handicap a game so properly, why would you be hedging back with plus points in the other direction for the idea of a middle in between where you now have to hit that middle, and if you don't, well, you've lost the juice from both games. I prefer to do a money line on the opposite end for like a fifth of a unit or whatever when spread gets that big from open or from the start of a game, because then you're still winning with your original bet and you're just making up for a loss with your back end. I know people that like to hedge in the middle with points in the other direction, and it's fine. But again, I think more often than not, you're trying to find a middle in a spot where you handicap the game so properly. Why would you want to even think about giving all that money back? So again, as far as hedging for you and every individual, it's relative to you. How much risk do you want to take on? I know for me, it bothers the shit out of me when I get a team I bet gets a huge lead out in the beginning and then ends up blowing it. I just find myself spiraling out of control mentally. So that's why I've neutralized that by my little hedging strategy. But again, create a hedging strategy that works for you. I'm not inside of all your heads. I could just tell you what works for me. And but think about it. And what may work best for you. Try to recap in your own head. What's the most things that have bothered you the most over the last few months, years, or days, months, weeks, years, whatever, in regards to your bets, and then begin to formulate a good hedging strategy to avoid that situation that potentially tilted you. Number 10, last but not least, I don't care how big a slate is. Don't ever make more than 5 bets in a given night. On a Saturday, where there is literally close to 100 games, if not more, maybe you can double that to 10. But if you truly feel like you have an edge on 40 fucking bets for a game or a week or a day or a night, whatever, you are out of your mind. Pick your spots. This goes back to what I was saying about the 30 to 40 teams at a maximum, 3 to 4 conferences at a maximum. Hone in on those teams and bet those games. Remember, folks, less is more in this industry. The more games you bet, the more juice you're paying. You want to play favorable spots. Remember, 1-0 is better than 2-1. 2-1 is better than 3-2. 3-2 is better than 4-3. As you continue to win one, lose one, you are just paying more juice. Less is more, folks. Keep yourself isolated to 5 games in a given slate at the most. Don't even try to force that many games. 3 to 5. If there's a slate where you want to take one, if you've had a week or two where you've bet a game every night, keep in mind there will be more betting action the day after, the day after that, the day after that. Feel free to take days off. Days off are good, whether you're on a winning streak, a losing streak, whatever it is. Days off are good to have. It'll keep you mentally stable. Spend some more time with your family, your friends, whether they want to see you or not. Spend more time with them, and it'll get your mind off of this. This stuff is fun and it's good, and it keeps you on edge, and it maybe keeps your heart rate going, keeps the rush flowing. But again, if you're doing this too much, it can be unhealthy. Don't overstress about it. Do not bet more than you need to be. Stay in your financial lane, and don't go crazy with any large amounts of bets in any given slate. Okay, so to recap the 10 tips I gave you for college basketball in this video. Number 1, use KenPom if you are not already. It's an amazing site for college basketball analytics. Number 2, begin to start making your own lines for college basketball. There is a lot of variance in college basketball in relation to all the various teams that there are, 353 to be exact. So make sure you're starting to begin to make your own lines. Point number 3 is stick to about 3 to 4 total conferences and 20 to 30 different teams to bet on at the most. This will keep yourself very knowledgeable and very refreshed on a lot of the teams you're betting on, instead of going from one conference to the other, to this team to the other. I'm going to bet Nevada at 11, but I'm going to bet Duke at 1. I'm going to bet Virginia at 4, and then I'm going to go ahead and bet Morehead State at 6. It's just stop yourself from going all over the place. Keep yourself to the same amount of teams, and that will help you long term to be able to create the proper lines for these games, as I mentioned in point 2. Number 4, make sure you are creating numbers for all sides of a game. A number you would bet team A, a number you would bet team B, and a range in between where it's a no play. Long term, this will create spots for you where you can really hone in on favorable numbers for team A, team B, and also really give you spots where you should be fading a game versus actually playing it. Number 5, using live betting to your advantage to get better numbers during the game versus pregame. Number 6, become better at predicting line movement. Can't stress how important this could be in terms of you getting favorable numbers. Number 7, stop laying double digits in college basketball, especially on the road. Rarely is that favorable. Number 8, ensure you are keeping proper bankroll management at all times, regardless of the sport. Obviously, this is college basketball. You can do this by keeping yourself capped at 1 unit for nearly all games. You can occasionally go to 2 units, but never any more than that. Number 9, at the right time, make sure you are utilizing a proper hedging strategy. But again, this is relative to the individual, so I can't tell you how to do this. I did tell you how I do it, but create yourself hedging scenarios and strategies where you will avoid yourself going into tilt. Number 10, cap yourself at no more than 5 games per slate. On a Saturday for college basketball, you can up this number a bit, but there is rarely more value to be found. There's rarely value to be found in more than 5 games, regardless of how much you convince yourself of that being the case. Okay, so that basically wraps this up. If any of these points are something you want me to go more into detail on, just shoot me a comment below, and I can definitely relate. I'll have the briefing of these categories in the paragraph of the video. This video is just to serve as a tips video. I don't want to go into superior detail on any of these in specific. I can do a second video where I go into the actual specifics on some of these, and even bring up some spots to light, like when to look for certain teams to bet, when to fade certain teams. But regardless, I hope you found this informative. If you liked it, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And again, feel free to comment below. Love the comments. If you aren't subscribed, please subscribe. Always giving you, quality content here with also some free picks and more videos to come as well. So I want to thank you guys again for watching, and I'll see you soon.